Good morning. It's Ginny, Eli, and Tim from DS Tech in the beautiful Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we're going to talk about the Snowflake data breach. Yep, and it affected 100 in some companies. I don't know. Tim has all the details, but he's going to give us the news on that. So stay tuned. Drop your comments and questions below this video. And so we have a new, well, it's just been disclosed, right? I mean, we don't know.
This just, we don't know the exact, when it started and things like that. But, and originally the hack was smaller than anticipated, but now that they're doing some investigation, it's actually affecting more companies. So just to give you an idea of where this all started was, there's an AI data company called Snowflake. So they're just a big cloud provider for giant companies like Ticketmaster, AT&T, various banks. All these giant corporations use these cloud providers to store their data, organize their data, use AI tools to sift through it, maybe make it better, things like that. Because you got to remember, the cloud is just someone else's computer, right? It's just a big data center somewhere else. And so the first company that was disclosed in this data leak from Snowflake was Santander Bank. And on the dark web, they were selling 30 million customer records, 6 million accounts. And so you actually would know the account details, so you know who had the most money to go after. 28 million credit cards were leaked, and they were selling that data for $2 million for a lump sum to just buy all this data. Then there was the Live Nation Ticketmaster one that also used the same cloud provider, the Snowflake there. They had 560 million full details like name, address, email, phone number, ticket sales, event info. All that information was also disclosed. And originally they thought that this was only a couple dozen companies, but now they've realized it's actually about 100. I think they're up to 165 companies have had their data leaked through this method. And I'll talk about how the attackers actually got in. It's from stuff that is like the most basic security stuff you'd think to set up. But again, anyway, I'll get into that a little bit.
It's easy to not set up. If it's easy to set up,
yeah,
it's easy to not set up, right?
So, and the big one too is AT&T. And the AT&T one was bad because it was pretty much like every single AT&T customer's phone number was leaked with their name. I don't have this details of what was leaked from AT&T, but the thing I'll go with that is how hackers look at this is, even if just say your phone number and your name was leaked, right? That's all they got, 2 columns of data. But then in a previous AT&T breach, there was a phone number and an address leaked. And then in a previous breach, there might have been a phone number and a credit card leaked. And so what a hacker is going to do is take the same phone number, and now they got your name, address, and credit card all from 3 different leaks, and they're going to combine all these leaks together in one big Excel sheet, and now you actually might get more data from multiple leaks. So even if one leak wasn't so bad that it had all the data, they can take all these different leaks, combine them together, and get a better profile of you. So the biggest thing is to just kind of stay vigilant. There's going to be a huge influx in scam calls for people that are high value targets, where people are going to call them pretending that they're do business with them and try to scam them, and they'll have information on file from the customers that have been leaked. So it sounds like they're legitimate on the phone. So just be kind of extra vigilant.
And they might text you, right?
They might text you as well. I mean, I could see scammers going so far as saying, hey, there's been a recent data leak through AT&T. Please click this link to help reset your password. And that's the actual hacker sending you the message, right? You just be very vigilant with everything that you're doing. Go to the main websites directly, log in, and
Well, and before we came on live, we were talking about some of the subject lines they would use, like in the text, or the, hey, you want a prize?
Oh, yeah, you want a prize.
There's a problem with your account.
There's a problem with your account. Yeah. There's very common tactics that sound like it's normal, but it could be them actually impersonating someone. So just, again, go to the main site. Don't click any links within the email or the text or anything like that. Always go to the main source that you know is legitimate, and then log into your account there and reset your stuff there as needed. So so the impacted instances, so what they do is they'll sell a portion of their computers for AT&T or Santander to use, and it's actually up to the individual companies to secure their instance, right? So this isn't really Snowflake's problem. They're not on the hook for it. It's actually AT&T on the hook. All these other people are on the hook because they're the ones that were in charge of setting up the security to their cloud instances. And so the biggest thing was that there was no MFA enabled. And so how they actually got in is there was lots of contractors working on the system. So a lot of times companies, rather than have a staff of 100 employees, they'll just hire people to come in and contract work for them. The problem with that is these contractor systems aren't issued from AT&T, so they don't have any say over those systems when they're not in use. So you have contractors who might be playing games, doing other personal stuff, and then using their same home, personal computer for work activities as a contractor. And so what happened is there was info stealing malware on some of these contractor computers, So when they downloaded, a pirated game or whatever it was, and it stole all their credentials, some of these passwords were as old as 2020. Well, the hackers went and tried to log into Snowflake with the credentials, and it just worked. No MFA, just logged right in. And like, wow, this password actually worked. And so they continued this campaign and just started looking at old passwords on the deep dark web that have been out since 2020, 2021. And they've just been trying all these different credentials to the Snowflake instances, and a ton of them are working because MFA, again, is not enabled. That would be a quick deterrent where if you had multi-factor, they try to log in with your email and password, the contractor would be like, why? I'm not logging into work right now. This doesn't make any sense, right? And it would have actually helped mitigate that action.
Yeah.
There's other things that can be done, like having network policies, meaning that only certain IP addresses are allowed to log into your cloud data. Like we do that. That's very basic stuff that we'll do with like our phone systems and things like that here, where you can only access it from a certain computer, because that way someone from Eastern Europe, even if they get your email and password, can't log in because that IP is not known. Right. You can really restrict it to who has access based on the network location. Very commonly that's used through a VPN, where if you can't access your work stuff until you turn the VPN on, that's what it's doing, is it's saying you have to have this specific thing first. Yes, it's a little bit more overhead on the company to set that up and manage it, but it's secure.
I mean, so though, it's however many dollar solution to a multi-million-dollar
problem. Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much what happened. Is these contractor systems were used, personal and for work, and then they had some malware on them, scraped their work credentials and logged in, and then started exfiltrating the data and selling it on the dark web. So the biggest takeaways from this is just some of the basic security that you're doing. You want to have MFA, rotate your passwords. I mean, if you've ever been an AT&T customer ever, I would rotate your customer and just be aware of that, because I think it was like almost all the AT&T customers and use a password manager. And always use a unique password. Don't use the same password for AT&T login as you do your other logins, because then when one password gets scraped like this, they can try to use that email password combination on all bunch of different websites and try to log in.
Forgive me, but no, this sounds a lot like on the galactic scans that I run. There's a section where it's called exploits that even a hacker with the most basic of skills could exploit. So it's things like MFA, like geofencing, or just like rotating passwords found on the dark web that don't expire, admin credentials that are used for everyday email, things like that. And it's like, this could give someone the keys to the kingdom, but thank goodness these are not tremendously hard to implement items if you get ahead of them. I mean, it could be tedious, but man, it'll save you some time in the long run.
And one thing the companies were firing about
time,
reputation,
and in your whole entire business.
Exactly. One thing that the companies were complaining about was that Snowflake didn't make it easy to implement MFA, because you couldn't just turn it on for everyone. It had to be done by account by account. But it's like,
so it was enabled rather than like enforced or something.
Come on.
It'd be like if you had, say, 10,000 customers, you'd have to turn it on for each one individually, rather than say I want to turn it on for all of them. So what happens?
Could the
a lot
individual
of
turn it on though?
I don't know if they could self-sign up or not. I haven't managed it, but that was one thing. But it's still, there's no excuse. I mean, if you're a giant corporation dealing with millions of dollars, take the time to secure all the accounts and instances, and like restrict them by IP, and just some of the basic stuff that.
What I'm also hearing is not to have your remote workers using their personal computers.
Exactly. Personal devices should never be used for work purposes, no matter how small your business is, because again, if you do one little thing, you're on Facebook, there's lots of info stealing malware is very common, and like a Facebook message, you just click the link and now it downloads, and every time you have a saved password in your browser, it will instantly grab that. Like what you're saying, right, is the most basic hacker can use this stuff, and if you save your passwords in your browser and different things like that, they can actually suck all that data right out of your computer, and then it's actually not, use it elsewhere. So that's why using like a password manager is better, because usually the passwords are encrypted. You're not gonna be able to just suck that up with the info stealing malware. So at the end of the day, make sure you're enabling MFA on your computers. Have work issued devices for your staff to use if they're out in the field. If you're hiring a contractor and you're for your business, it wouldn't hurt to give them, you do your work on this computer, and when you're done with your contract, you're going to give the computer back to us. Like there's something that they could have done. There's different things to do out there, and just be very vigilant. Let people know that AT&T had this massive breach, especially to say like elderly people who may be susceptible to scams, right? They're going to get tons. I feel like in a couple months, maybe even
Emails,
sooner than that,
texts, calls.
there's going to be a ramp up of call scams because this data is going to now start floating and being sold and going to various groups where they do this call scams in the big call centers, and they're going to be targeting people saying, hey, we have this information, we have your credit card ending in this, blah, blah, blah. Is there any way you can update our files? And they're going to just get some old person to give them the new credit card. And that it's just be very wary of who you're talking to on the phone. Always verify and try to go directly to the source if possible. It happens too where someone just called me the other day to verify something with a family member of mine that recently passed. And it sounded kind of fishy. I'm like, they're trying to call to say that they're calling from the government, wanted to verify a few details and stuff. I'm like,
we're here to help.
all right, so do you have a number I can call into? And I actually asked and requested that, and they did. They're like, oh yeah, you can call in here, because a lot of times scammers will not allow you to call in. So once they gave me the call-in number, I vetted the number, I called back in, got back in touch with the person, and then disclosed the information to them that was personal, because it can very happen where scammers will try to just suck the info. So be very vigilant.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're thinking too, if this gets the gears turning on, oh man, I have passwords elsewhere that aren't expiring, things like that. Maybe not just for AT&T, but for your other providers, things like that, or carriers. It'd be worth updating that.
I try to make it like a New Year's thing, right? At the new year, there's certain things you do kind of every year on a yearly basis, whether it's changing the batteries and the smoke alarms or whatever it is. But at this point, change your passwords every year, rotate them, make sure they're unique, take a day to go through all your stuff and just verify that you are updating things. You're not leaving these old passwords out there and just
password managers will sometimes remind you, right, and tell you that these are the passwords you should change.
Yeah, especially you might be getting notices from Experian, the various credit company places. You're probably going to be getting notices if you haven't already, saying that AT&T and these other places have been involved in a breach. Same thing, you want to use credit monitoring services, maybe freeze credit cards, get new cards issued if you actually are that concerned about it. But realistically, just be vigilant, watch your stuff, and then report any sort of fraud you see.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, you mentioned the galactic scan.
Yes, the galactic, which
he likes saying
is
that.
at this time. It's probably going to continue to be.
Yeah, but
you're curious to see how much data
it's something
they could
we
leave
use to make sure we're. Of course, it's one of the layers of security.
It does search the dark web
it
for compromised.
absolutely does. Yeah.
So
it's
why not? It's
not
free.
only a dark web scan, but it'll tell you.
If
what
you think
can
you're a
do.
good fit for our company, then call us or visit our website at dstech.net.
Or we could easily implement all the stuff we've talked about: MFA, geofencing, IP restrictions. All this stuff's easy for us to do. And we'll make sure your business is secured better than these giant AT&T companies.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the bigger you are, it's harder to manage, right?
It's true.
So, all right. So make it a great day. We'll see you next time. Drop your comments and your questions and visit our website to sign up for that free galactic scan. See you next time.